My wife cheated on me with her boss. I took her boss's wife and we stole all their money and went away. My wife cheated with my horrible coworker who's made my job hell. Turns out he's married too, so I partnered with his wife to rip them off financially. I, a 28-year-old man, found my wife Sarah, a 24-year-old woman, making out with my colleague Jason on the patio at the Christmas party. Jason works in the same department as me. I have yet to confront Sarah, so everything I'm writing is based on what I've seen and circumstantial evidence. I suspect their affair started after the last Christmas party, but they've cleverly been hiding it. I was new at this workplace, and it was my first office party. Jason and I didn't get along well at work, not because I was new, but because he considered me a threat. In the very first week of my joining, I was handed some of Jason's tasks, which I efficiently automated using my software skills. The work that took Jason a week to complete, I delivered in 3 days, which impressed everyone but Jason. He tried different ways to find a loophole in my work, but couldn't. He was heavily criticized by management for not thinking of something similar. However, this didn't help me much in the office. Jason was a popular guy, more of an imposter and gossip monger. People love gossip, don't they? So he was the wannabe in every office group, whereas I'm more of an introverted person who likes to keep to myself. I go to work, fulfill my responsibilities, and head back home. I was happy with my small circle of college buddies and my wife. 2 months later, we had this annual Christmas party at work. I showed up with my wife. Sarah is definitely a beautiful woman and a head-turner at any party. She makes sure to dress up well to show off her perfect symmetrical assets. Sarah and I were enjoying and bonding with other co-workers as the night grew. People started hitting the dance floor. Sarah insisted that we dance, but I refused. I'm not a confident dancer, especially not at office parties. I think Jason noticed that because the next moment I saw him approaching our table and asking my wife to dance. She looked at me, and I smiled. I couldn't say no in that situation. I thought she would turn him down, knowing the history between us, but Sarah obliged and danced with him. I couldn't help but notice the grin on his face when he took her to the dance floor. When she came back, she was full of energy and laughter. Seeing my grim face, she said, "Oh, don't be mad. How could I refuse him? It would have been so rude, so I had to oblige." I realized she was right, and it was just a dance. Eventually, I forgot about it. I got busy at work and never imagined that my wife would be fooling around with the person who has been a pain in my ass for a year. At this year's Christmas party, I showed up with my wife again. She hit the dance floor with some of my female colleagues, but was soon seen grooving with Jason. I was like, what the hell? But I had to pretend to be cool about it. Other colleagues were quick to notice and exchanged glances. Everyone is aware of the Cold War between Jason and me. One of them, Noah, remarked, "This is why Jason doesn't bring his wife along, so he could shake other wives' booties." My face flustered at his comment. I asked him to mind his language. He apologized and said he was just being funny to lighten the situation. Other colleagues started debating whether Jason is married because he claims to be single. Some suspect he's married but hides it to have open chances with the juniors. Noah was certain that Jason was married, but no one fully believed him because of his prankster image. He said his sister runs a salon, and one day he had dropped by to meet her there. He continued to tell us that he saw Jason with a woman and child and assumed they were his family but had no proof. Later that night, I noticed my wife and Jason had disappeared. I decided to check the patio and found them hugging and kissing. My heart sank, but I decided not to create a scene right then. The next morning, I called Jason's wife, Emily, to inform her about what I had seen. She was shocked, but thanked me for telling her the truth. We decided to join forces to punish our unfaithful partners financially. We planned to file for divorce, but before doing so, we transferred a significant portion of our joint assets to our children and charities to ensure our partners couldn't get everything. We also consulted with lawyers to maximize our benefits from the divorces. Our partners would be left with the minimum while we retained the majority of the shared assets. It was difficult and painful, but I knew it was the best way forward. I still haven't confronted Sarah about what I saw, but I plan to do so after all the legal procedures are complete. My main goal is to protect myself and our assets from her betrayal. It's been a tough journey, but I hope that in the end, we can find peace and move on with our lives, leaving the past behind. I bumped into Jason, who was accompanying his wife for a grooming session. Everyone just laughed at this, thinking Noah was making it up. I felt suffocated sitting there and watching Sarah shake her booty with Jason. I went to the patio to get some fresh air. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps approaching. I ignored it, but as they came closer, I heard giggles and moans as if they were making out on their way to the patio. To avoid getting bumped into, I hid in the corner at the back to escape once they were in. Moments later, I saw a couple entering the patio with their lips locked and hands all over each other. They were none other than Jason and my lovely wife. He held her by her waist with one hand while the other one was inside her dress. Sarah was holding his face with both her hands, lost in pleasure. I wanted to beat the hell out of them right there, but instead I pulled out my phone and recorded everything. It was dark, yet the dim light captured enough. Jason held her by her neck to push her away from his face and said, "We don't have much time before your lowlife husband comes here searching for you. Let me give you a good show." She giggled and bent on all fours. All of it got recorded. My body went numb. I could feel nothing. I don't know how long I stood there when a janitor showed up with a garbage bin. They hurriedly covered themselves and left, cursing the janitor who interrupted their blissful time. After the janitor finished his business and left, I came out of my hideout, headed straight to my car, and drove off. I crashed at my friend's place and made him listen to my sob story until morning. When I checked my phone, I found one missed call from Sarah. It looked like a courtesy call to show she was looking for me. I bet she was happy to see me disappear so she could get banged by her lover in the open. This afternoon, I came home. She was still sleeping. Understandable, VJ, she must have been sore from last night's action. I went to my study to hatch my revenge. Her cheating on me is hurtful, but her sleeping with a man who has made my life miserable makes it even more outrageous. Right now, I'm scavenging to find Jason's wife. I'm going to find her and send the videos of his cheating. All of Jason's social media accounts are private. I cannot see his friend list. I don't even know her name. In fact, I don't even know if she exists. If you guys have any tricks for finding out a stranger on social media, please help me out. I would appreciate any help on that front. Thanks. Update 1. One of the most common comments here was, "How did I not see this coming? Were there no signs at all?" Well, I don't know if that was truly a sign or if I had too much faith in my wife. A few months after the first Christmas party, I think it was around spring, I was scrolling through my Facebook feed when I noticed Jason's comments on Sarah's post. I was taken aback. I asked her if she was in touch with him. She said no, he was just her Facebook friend like thousands of others. She said Jason had sent her the friend request after that party, and she had accepted it. That's it, no big deal. I got alert and reviewed her profile more often. I saw Jason's generous comments with heart emojis on each of her photos. I asked her about this, and she said it was just one of those hundreds of comments she gets on her pictures. Sarah is not a social media influencer, but she's very active there, and her profile is open. I told her that Jason is not one of those 100 strangers who comment on her pictures. He and I are not on good terms at work. He doesn't even talk to me at work, so why the hell is he interested in my wife's pictures? She replied sarcastically, "You should ask him." Her response infuriated me, and I yelled, "He is no one to me. I cannot question him, but you are my wife. It hurts me to see you in touch with someone whose sole motive in life is to pull me down." Jason had pulled many tricks at work to show me in a bad light. He was even successful a couple of times, and I was severely criticized by my manager. Jason is also a bootlicker and had manipulated our manager into his camp. Sarah knows everything about my office politics, yet she let Jason's flirtatious comments slide into her inbox. This continued until July this year, when my department bagged a new project, and I had to travel twice every month to the client's office in Seattle. Work got really hectic, and I barely had time to think about anything else. Jason and I were both on the same team and had similar job responsibilities, but somehow he was always free and loitering in the lobby, whereas I was immersed in work. It was overwhelming, but I took it as a learning opportunity and worked my ass off. During this time, I found Sarah getting emotionally distant from me. I thought it was because of my work commitments and travel schedule. I tried to make it up by taking her to fancy dinners on weekends and buying expensive gifts for her. She never complained about my travel or my absence at home. She didn't even acknowledge the growing coldness between us, and this was bothering me. I insisted my manager not send me on work trips so frequently, or at least shuffle it between me and Jason, but he refused. He said I was more skilled to handle the client there. I said, then why does he get all the Achievers Awards every quarter while all I get is criticism? He had no answer but gave me a false promise that he would recommend my name for the next promotion. He was a bad liar. It was evident on his face that he was not going to do that. Talking about Sarah, when she woke up after her long slumber that evening, she asked me why I left her alone at the party. I said, "You needed me? I thought you were having a fun time with your new friend." She laughed and said, "Oh, don't be a jealous baby. It was just a dance." I smiled and let it slide. She thought I was angry that she was dancing with Jason. I let her think that because I'm going to attack them without any warning. My search for Jason's wife has yielded no results yet. I tried searching with Jason's surname, but the results were overwhelming. I'm thinking of fishing out Jason's address from the company's database and heading to his home. I find no other option than this. Any better suggestions are most welcome. Update 2. As some of you mentioned, it is next to impossible to find someone without a name or handle on social media. I was almost certain to go to his house and find his wife, but then my friend reminded me about my colleague Noah. I felt he knew about Jason's wife and could help me out here. Though he's a big-mouthed person and I'm not very fond of him, I needed his help. The next day when I went to work, I casually got into a conversation with him and asked if he knew about Jason's wife. He smirked at me and said, "I knew you would ask about her, especially after last night's twerking." Yeah, that's how he is, VGJ, an annoying piece of work. I wanted to ask him about her name, but didn't have the courage to do so. Maybe he sensed the desperateness and helplessness on my face and asked, "Do you want to know her name or contact?" I immediately blurted out in excitement, "Please." He told me her name and said that he would ask his sister for her number. I searched with her name across all social media platforms and found her on Twitter. I told Noah that the number was not required. As per her Twitter bio, she was working in a management position at one of the leading global organizations. I texted her saying I needed to talk to her about something very important regarding her husband. She responded with her number and asked me to call. Her response gave me the vibe of a confident and poignant woman. I called her and introduced myself. I told her subtly that her husband and my wife were up to something and that I had the video of them together. She asked if I could meet her after work, and I said sure. When I went to meet her, I was mesmerized by her aura. She was definitely a woman of value and wit. I wondered how any man could cheat on such beauty with brains. That's right, only a fool like Jason would. I narrated the details and showed her the video. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she remained composed. She was shocked to know that the office party had an invitation for spouses because Jason told her that spouses were not invited. I asked her if she had never doubted him. She said she had caught him twice sexting some random woman on social media, but it wasn't severe, so she forgave him. I told her that Jason claims to be single and has this reputation of a playboy at work, and has been associated with many junior colleagues. She cursed him at the top of her voice. She had been holding herself until then. She said, "That son of a bitch needs to be taught a lesson. Do you have any plans in mind?" I said no, not right now, but I'm definitely going to make them pay for all the humiliation. She said, "Let's do it together." Now we are in this together, planning our revenge. We have come up with some very amusing ways to ruin Sarah and Jason. We'll update the thread after the final nail in the coffin. Update 3. Hold on to your seatbelts. This is going to be wild. Sarah and Jason have been served with hot, piping revenge. Jason's wife, Sandra, 33, and I came up with the following revenge plan. We turned a blind eye to their affair. Though we knew they were lying about the sleepovers with friends, we let it slide. We both pretended to be so busy at work that we didn't give a damn. Sarah and I co-own the house. I made an updated document where Sarah made me the sole owner of the house and had her sign it VDJ not forcefully but tactically. She was once heading out to meet Jason, lying that she was going shopping with friends. I deliberately blocked the restroom wardrobe, making her run late. When she was about to leave, I asked her to sign an insurance renewal document. It wasn't suspicious because I pay for all her insurance. She just signs it and gets done with it. Between those papers, I kept the house ownership document. She signed all of them without seeing them. Sandra emptied all the money from their joint bank account, borrowed Jason's car, and sold it off to a rookie. The house in which Sandra lived was hers, which she secretly leased out to a new tenant and got a restraining order against Jason on that property. I blocked all the cards on which Sarah was surviving. Numbers 3, 4, and 5 were carried out towards the tail end of the revenge just before ghosting them. Sandra bought a 5-day couple holiday trip to Florida as a birthday gift for Jason. But a day before the trip, she lied that something had come up at work and she couldn't make it. Jason quickly suggested that he could take this trip with his guy friend. Sandra agreed because it was a non-refundable package. During that same time, I lied to Sarah that I was going on a 15-day work trip. I checked into a hotel during that period. She called me and said she was going to her school friend's wedding in Vegas. I asked her which friend she was that I didn't know of. She said they were not in touch for so long, but suddenly she called up, invited her, and Sarah couldn't. Sarah said she couldn't say no. I said, "Sure, have fun." She was feeding me lie after lie. Jason and Sarah went on that 4-day vacation to Florida, which Sandra had bought. We used their absence to execute our plans. Sandra emptied their joint account, sold his car, rented out her house, and got a restraining order against him. I blocked the cards which Sarah had been using, packed up her stuff, and kept it in storage. The details would reach her through mail along with updated property papers and a restraining order after she returns. This would have been all if Jason had left me alone at work, but he didn't. He proudly told his work buddies that he had been with my wife because I couldn't fulfill her. He made outrageous comments hinting at me. He even showed Sarah's chat to his friends where she was expressing her desires for Jason and mocking me for giving her only vanilla sex, while Jason gave her a thrilling time. He used to read out her chats aloud to humiliate me without taking my name. I decided to use this against him and recorded that stuff. Some of the co-workers from Jason's camp even approached me to humiliate me, saying that Jason had taken my wife. I mailed all the details to the company's HR, demanding Jason's termination on the grounds of mentally torturing me. I even threatened the management to leak all this workplace harassment on social media and other review platforms. This negative PR could cost a lot to the company, and HR promised me that evidence proved that Jason was a bully and he would be terminated as soon as he comes back from his 4-day trip. I've also sent out my resignation and asked for an immediate release. I left a letter for Sarah which she would get after returning from the trip. It would give her closure. It consists of more or less the same thing I have mentioned in this update, with a little extra detailing. I told her the truth about Jason VDJ, that he's not single as he has been claiming, and that he has a wife who's now my girlfriend. Sandra and I connected over our betrayal and realized that we have so much in common. She's a smart and witty woman with a flourishing career, while my loser wife is a bum. She has never done a full-time job. Her part-time job seemed to be a burden for her, and she used to complain about it. I'm amused to imagine her dilemma when she would have to work full-time because now she doesn't have me to provide for her, nor does her loser lover have a job. Sandra slipped off Jason's credit card just when he was leaving for the trip. He would have found it missing after reaching Florida. The situation in Florida is going to be hilarious. Jason has no cards, and I have blocked Sarah's card. Sandra has also called up the hotel to cancel the bookings just before Jason and Sarah were about to arrive in Florida. She didn't get any refund, but who cares? We could give up anything to watch the fun these losers go through on their lust trip. Sandra and I have also decided not to divorce these losers because we don't want to waste a penny more on them. If they want to get rid of us, they can pay for it, which looks highly unlikely now. We both have updated our wills and removed them from all our assets in case anything unforeseen happens to us. They shouldn't get anything by default as they are our spouses. Sandra and I are moving to Seattle to start a fresh life. I got an offer from the client company to join them directly. The raise is 1.5x my last company. Sandra said she wanted to take a break from work and enjoy it for some time. She had enough savings to last for a couple of years without worrying. Our belongings are already on the way to Seattle. By the time Jason and Sarah return, we'll be away for our 2-week holiday to the Caribbean, basking in the sun. It's so much fun with Sandra, a woman who matches my intellect and curiosity. I feel so lively again. We're not seeing our forever with each other. Don't want to put that burden on ourselves. But yeah, enjoying our time together while we can. Busting my wife's affair with her professor by exposing their texts and videos during her big presentation DJJ. They both got kicked out. I, a 25-year-old man, and my wife, a 23-year-old woman, have been married for about 2 years. We met on a typical date, one that involved drinks and good conversation. I learned she was a dentist and had recently graduated. She pushed her way through dental school and has been successful thus far. I was a contractor for a business and didn't make anywhere near as much money as she did. Still, I wanted to support her, and her love of classical music also brought us together. I took her to see the orchestra, and because of this, the two of us fell in love. After a few months, we moved in together. We both lived in an apartment and eventually, over the next year, realized we felt strongly for one another. With our combined income, we ended up getting a townhouse. I started getting better gigs and working on my business as well, and I fronted most of the mortgage despite her having a successful dental practice. Eventually, a year later, after we moved into the townhouse, I popped the question. I asked if she would marry me at a classical music concert on the anniversary of our first date. She said yes, and within a few weeks we rushed the ceremony and were married. Things were great. I provided for her, getting her luxury items when I could. She gave back as well, despite insisting that I didn't need to. But I loved her, and I wanted to give her the world. Then things changed. My wife was told that her education was too archaic to qualify for her position. She needed to get continuing education or come back and get a higher degree. When she told me this, I was a little hesitant. That's one income that we'd have to rely on. She insisted that the practice would be okay. She wanted to run it still, but would have a more hands-off approach rather than hands-on. After some back and forth, where I told her that she could just do it part-time or something, we came to an agreement. She would go back to school, and I would provide for both of us. It wasn't a huge issue. However, it did mean that both of us would have to live a bit more modestly. She enrolled in school and went full-time. She told me that she'd be done within the year, and once she was done, she wouldn't need another continuing education for another 4 years. She could do it throughout the years on her own time. I agreed with this, thinking it would be easy. I mean, it's not like I wasn't making money, right? But then it happened. We had some financial troubles. It began with losing a couple of major contracting jobs. I figured I could bounce back and get it together. Then I discovered an employee was embezzling company funds, VJJ thousands in fact. We had to pay for a lawyer to provide litigation for that, and I also had to shell out money just to win the case. It was hell, to say the least. I had to do this all on my own because my wife wasn't helping with it. That's when I started noticing the changes. Instead of being open and inviting, my wife grew distant, almost cold and uninviting. Whenever I asked her how school was going, she would act distant. Something was up. I noticed she spent her nights at school later. She told me it was because she was trying to get help from her professor, but something seemed off. When I asked her what she needed help with, she wouldn't directly respond. She said it was complicated and that she needed to focus on her studies. She said it had something to do with dental techniques and nothing more. I brushed it off initially. After all, she might just be stressed. However, other aspects of our relationship deteriorated. The most apparent was the sex. We had it less and less. She shied away, telling me she was too tired. Even on the weekends when she was freer, she'd hole herself up in her office to work on homework. Eventually, I grew frustrated. Why was my wife pushing me away and kicking me out? I grew curious. I told my buddy about it, and he told me that she might be cheating. That's preposterous! Cheating! Why would she cheat on me? Then it occurred to me. Maybe that's why she got distant. My friend said the only way to prove it would be to look at texts and recordings, so I did. One night while she was in the shower, she left her phone out. I thought that it was bait, but when I opened it, I saw some texts. They were all for someone called Professor B, and there was a heart next to it. She sent this person flirty messages, even saying that she wouldn't come home late and planned to spend time with him. I had to figure out who Professor B was. I scoured through the school records and found Professor Burns, one of the lead professors for the dental division. Suddenly it all made sense. My wife was distant, and of course she had her own personal disdain for all forms of intimacy. It upset me, but I knew what I had to do. I quickly formulated a plan. My wife had a presentation for her dental academy project. I went to her computer and changed it out. A smile formed on my face when I did it. My wife mentioned her presentation, and I asked if anyone could come see it. She said yes, and then I told her I'd come see her. She grew nervous, saying I didn't have to, but I insisted. On the day of the presentation, I walked in, sitting right in the front row. I watched as it was her turn. My wife popped in the PowerPoint, and the smile she had turned into a look of horror. It was all the messages of her cheating, revealing to everyone there that she was seeing Professor Burns. I even found a couple of videos on her phone too, which I showcased. When my wife asked what this was, I asked her back. I told her that I knew she was cheating, and that I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I called her a cheater and that I didn't want anything to do with her. She finally broke down, saying that Professor Burns was a good man and that he made her happy. I told her that was no excuse and that I was disgusted with her. Professor Burns was outed, and the faculty immediately fired him. They told him never to come back or teach at the university. I don't know if he ever found another job, or if his past haunted him. As for my wife, her being exposed as a cheater was embarrassing, but the dean took it upon himself to kick both of them out. My wife was blacklisted from other universities too, as it was found she plagiarized a couple of papers. She lost her job and wasn't able to go back to dental school. I kicked her out of the house too. While I fronted the mortgage and it was hard, I don't regret it. She's a cheater, and I don't take it kindly. She did it because he made good money since he had some big papers. Still, it sucks learning about this, but it is what it is.